The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said that humans are condemned to be free, which I thought was interesting because isn't that what we want? Don't we want freedom? Why would freedom be a condemnation? Well, it turns out that this philosopher was onto something. Freedom is so overwhelming that most humans don't want to be free, and so they offload freedom. They willingly submit themselves to essentially servitude. Let me explain. Oftentimes when we realize how free we are, we become so overwhelmed with this moral responsibility, this idea that we are responsible for our lives, for the decisions that we make. And that sense of overwhelm causes us to offload that responsibility to other things. And there are three ways that we do this. There are three ways that we offload that moral responsibility. The first one is role identification. The second one is a belief in determinism. And the third is a dependence on authority. And each one of those ways that we offload this moral responsibility, we give up a little bit of our freedom. And we give up the ability to be our authentic selves. So let's quickly go over those three main ways that we give up our moral responsibility, or we give up our freedom. And so the first one is the role identification. So think about the different roles that you play in your life. When you go to work, do you play the role of, human resource specialist, or sales professional, or marketer? And then when you come home, do you play the role of spouse, of parent, of brother, of son? Or when you go to your religious organization, do you play the role of member of that church or pastor of that church? Think about all the roles that you play and how easy it is to just slip into those roles. Okay, the second one is determinism. We all have ways of offloading our decision making to the idea that everything's already determined, whether that's by fate or natural laws or astrology or divine will. And last but certainly not least, in fact, I think this one is probably the biggest problem that humanity faces, is our adherence to authority, our dependence on authority in order for us to make decisions. So think about all of the people that you follow and all of the organizations that you belong to. When we follow these people, we offload our responsibility that comes with freedom. And we do so willingly because that freedom is so overwhelming. And listen, I'm not pointing the finger here. I'm saying it's human tendency to do this, and it's honestly even necessary. This freedom of choice can be so overwhelming, and we all can't be experts in every single given field, that we have to offload some of this responsibility to experts and leaders and organizations. Otherwise, we'd be completely paralyzed at every single tiny choice. This is something that we all have to do. What I'm trying to say here is that we need to recognize this. We need to become aware of the fact that we are giving up our freedom. We are giving up this responsibility to other people and other organizations and to the roles that we identify with. And if we can take that awareness and turn it into humility, I think that would go a long ways. And along with that humility, I think it makes sense for each of us to take a critical look at the organizations that we adhere to, or the leaders that we follow, and the roles that we assume, and just understand that what we're doing is giving up freedom to these roles, these people, these organizations. And just take a critical look and just make sure that we're okay with that we are okay with giving up our freedom to specific organizations, leaders, and the roles that we assume. And if we're not, then we can change it. And if we are, then we are fully aware and conscious of the fact that we are doing that. And decide for yourself whether or not you're doing it in a healthy way. You're doing it in a way that is bringing you the best life. And so what that has looked like in practice for me is that I've taken the time to look at all of the ways that I have offloaded my responsibility, whether that's to leaders or organizations or roles that I assume, and make sure that I'm okay with those specific areas of my life being offloaded. And the ones that are more important to me, for example, my understanding of philosophy and spirituality and religion, that is something that I'm not willing to offload onto anyone else anymore. That is something that I have dedicated much more time and effort towards, because I've found much more meaning, and because for me, I want more autonomy and more responsibility when it comes to my spiritual life and my understanding of philosophical topics. But that's just me. I'm not saying that everyone should be that exact same way. I think we just need to understand the ways that we offload this responsibility and make sure that we're okay with that. And so when I do offload my moral responsibility and give up a little bit of my freedom to follow a leader or to adhere to an organization, I make sure that they have my best interests at heart and that I can fully trust them. And oftentimes that means that I'm looking at multiple organizations, or that I'm listening to multiple experts on a given topic, because I think that it makes sense to do everything that I can to get the correct information when I'm giving up my freedom and my responsibility when it comes to that freedom that is inherent to humans. All of that to say, I completely understand where Jean-Paul was coming from when he said that humans are condemned to be free. That moral responsibility that we all have can feel incredibly overwhelming. And speaking of experts, I am definitely not an expert in any of this. This is just something that I consider a passion project. But if that was interesting to you or thought-provoking, stick around and I'll catch you in the next video.